Well, thank you all for joining us. You are the original three angry people in a pub that has become the legend of 2025. And what I wanted to do as we're approaching our anniversary of that, and those 5 years have flown by, we're glad that you could all join us to just reflect on what started 2025, what caused you to do it, what caused you to sort of come together and think about doing something different, and then hopefully in the end to think about what we should be doing for the next 5 years. So Margaret, I'm going to come to you. You were kind of the ringleader at the beginning and the first chair of 2025. So back in 2014, when we first met, actually, it seems like we've known each other for longer than that, but that's when we first met. Was there one particular event or something else that made you really feel you had to do something about health inequalities in North Wales?
I think it was a coming together of a number of things, actually. So the first one was, well, most of them were personal, but then the political small p is always personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd just finished my master's degree in public health at Glyndŵr University, and that for me had joined up lots of bits of my life as going there as a mature student was actually life-changing in lots of ways. And it suddenly all made sense. And a lot of that was around inequality at the higher level. I'd stepped into the role as vice chair of the health board in North Wales, and one of the reasons for going for that role was that a social prescription service which had been run in Flintshire and Wrexham for the previous 8-9 years, which was absolutely wonderful, had been finished because the health board had pulled the funding and they just didn't get why it worked and what value it added. So I was angry about that. And again, a chance meeting with Clare's predecessor, Graham Worthington, with myself and the then chair of the health board. And, you know, it was one of those sort of come in and have a cup of coffee type chat. So actually the reason he wanted to have a cup of coffee was because there was a message on behalf of all the people leading the housing sector at the time across North Wales, which was that you guys, and it was predominantly guys in the health board, are really difficult to get in the room to talk about the contribution that housing could make to the health agenda. And because in North Wales, in Wales, we've got integrated health boards and have had them since 2009, but never maximised the potential of having those structures and still haven't. It was a wonderful opportunity and an open door to do something or try and do something a little bit different. So I tried to get the guys in the room, needed allies to do that, which is where Clare and Paul and eventually you came in, Ken. And it took me nearly 10 months. And I can be fairly persuasive, as I think you all know, but it was a hard few months to get people to commit to even sit in the same room.
So
that was February 2015.
So there's something in there then about kind of a little bit of resilience and stamina to get these things going as well. So Paul, what about you? What brought you to the table?
Very, very similar. I think mine was pure frustration at the difficulty of making anything happen. Back in the day, there was a North Wales chief executives group for housing associations, and I took the lead on health, and that got me a place on the stakeholder reference board of the Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board, and that's where I met Margaret, I think, and I recall sort of expressing some frustration after a meeting when we had a brief chat one day. And it went back to a meeting that was quite bizarrely, I must have taken the minutes because I still have them. You may think I should have thrown some of these things out by now, but I came across them on a memory stick. And it was a meeting between the Housing Association chief executives and directors of the health board in May 2012. It was a really, it felt really positive to be in the meeting. It was wide ranging. We looked at possibility of joint working, how we could collaborate on areas of mutual interest. We looked at there was a reorganisation of the health sector going on at the time, with reducing the number of sites across North Wales, and we looked at how we could help and the consultation. And after all that, the one agreement that came out was that we should meet again in 6 months. How familiar was that as a scenario, as an outcome of a meeting, unfortunately. And that, I remember, I think it was getting to the end of doing the notes to circulate and thinking, wow, is that all we got? Is that where we got to with this? And then 6 months came and went. The consultation had a rocky period, I think. I don't honestly recall whether we actually met again or not, but I think it was probably after that I vented my frustration at the stakeholder reference group meeting. And then that dovetails into the picture that Margaret's just painted of how we came together.
So you were already grumpy before the anger set in, then, in terms of just a lack of contact and engagement, and seeing these inequalities continue. Is that fair? Yeah,
I was a grumpy younger man then. I was a trainee grumpy old man. I'm now fully qualified.
and a mentor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. That's a great start. Claire, you were at Flintshire Council at the time, weren't you, as a chief officer?
Was, and I'd been working quite closely with Margaret in her previous role at Age Connect, and we've done quite a lot of work together around social enterprise development and social prescribing type services. But I think the moment for me was looking at some stats around life expectancy, and realising that life expectancy was still very, very different in different parts of Wales. And when I started to look at those figures in more detail, realising that life expectancy was much shorter in the poorer communities, and the poorer communities were where most of the social housing was. And knowing that there was a huge investment programme going on across Wales, so it wasn't anything to do with the condition of the houses that was allowing people to live lives with more ill health and to die much sooner, but it was something much broader than that and much more complex around inequality. So when Margaret contacted me around her frustrations around how do we get health and housing talking more together, because housing providers could be playing a much more significant role in helping to let people have healthier lives, I just sort of jumped at the opportunity. And I've never been one to shy away from something difficult. If it's the right thing to do, you just have to crack on. So it was great really to connect with Paul and Margaret and start to think about what we could do to make some positive changes.